Ektachrome 5071. It's a slide duplication film that was used to make copies of Ektachrome or Kodachrome photos. The intent was that when photographers would submit for magazine editorials, they would have to send the slides of their work. Thus, this was used to make color-accurate copies of original slides. That was the original intention of this film, but with digital scanning techniques nowadays, that purpose is obsolete now. And one of the joys of shooting film photography are the happy accidents that comes with shooting something not as it's intended. You can get some incredible results with some of these old expired films, and this one was no exception. What I absolutely loved about this film was that it reminded me of one of my favorite movies from my childhood. Tron was one of my favorite movies as a kid. The graphics by today's standard may seem archaic, but the blue and orange neon suits, the futuristic motorbikes, and computer graphics and soundtrack perhaps subconsciously sparked my love of night photography and neon signs. And when the sequel came out, TRON Legacy, with that Daft Punk soundtrack, it was such a great nostalgic piece, and that signature teal blue look came back in spades. Now, I've only shot 3 rolls of Kodak Ektachrome 5071 so far, but today I'm going to show you my favorite shots of what I've shot to date, as well as a few film comparisons of other films I've shot at the same locations. So here's my Kodak Ektachrome 5071 video, a mini love letter to TRON. Before I begin, I want to give a disclaimer that your mileage may vary. Since this is a decades old film, I can't confidently say if these are the natural looks of the film or if it's color shifts due to age. So buy expired film at your own risk. So let's look at Kodak Ektachrome 5071 at night. These were some of the first shots of the roll. I loved how most of the lights, sky, and shadows have this teal blue cast to them, and red seems to be the only other color in the scene that really stands out. All these building shots remind me a lot of Incom from the Tron movie. Another thing that I liked was how the red stood out. It really emphasized that look of the main 2 color palettes from Tron. I love the light reflecting in this image. Again, you can see here how there are very few variations of colors, with teal, blue, and greens are the main colors of the lights. Some of the whites and then the reds from the neon sign. Here, even the shadow detail leans towards that teal color. I like how the teal in this photo is more subtle. Here you can see how the light itself has that teal color as well as the midtones reflected in the concrete. But even a bright green sign like the Dollar Tree looks much more subtle with this film. I think a lot of the colors in that spectrum, like green, blue, teal, all kind of start to lean towards a similar color. I love the lights on the wet street in this photo. Now, all these shots you just saw were from the first roll of film. These were some from the second roll I shot. It seemed a little bit like the teal wasn't as pronounced, maybe a little more subtle. And again, since these rolls of film were decades old, I'm not really sure how much of these were the natural characteristics of the film versus a color shift over time. But I liked how the sky was during the late blue hour. Twilight turned more kind of a purplish color than blue. Same with this shot. But when you get closer and there's a lot of artificial light in the scene, you can definitely see the strong teal cast again. I really like in this scene how there's a lot less light and how the shadow detail makes it so cool. In this photo, I really liked how the red and blue light from the massage sign made it into more of a mix of pink, purple, and teal along the ceiling. One thing you often see in night scenes is that brick tends to look more warm on most other film stocks kind of that orange, yellow, and reddish. But here with this film, it feels more like a beige green. Again, I think the colors that really stand out in contrast with this film are red colors. Now this shot feels more normal compared to others, but the sidewalk still retains that teal look. Versus this parking lot shot feels like it really is part of the movie Tron. Now I want to take a look at some comparisons of Kodak Ektachrome 5071 to two other films I've shot at night. Here you can see how the sky and lights change between these three films. I really like how monochromatic the 5071 is, with the red being the only other color that really pops out. Versus the Fujichrome T64 is mostly blue, but there are some greens and red and even some faint hints of orange in the building. The Cinestill is heavy on the red halation, but you can also make out some greens and blues as well. I think what's most interesting in these shots is how the lights themselves look teal while also giving off a teal color cast, while the T64 lights themselves look white, but the color temperature and cast is more like a cool blue, while the Cinestill 800T had a more warm look with orangish red lights and some greens. What I find most interesting in these shots is how the side of the building looks in the shadows. Each film has a very distinct look. This shot overall is very boring, but I think illustrates how the light and color temperatures changes so much. One thing I love about the 5071 and the T64 is how cool they look. Most film stocks these days seem to lean more towards the warmer end of the spectrum, but I find the cool look to be more interesting and unique. I like how these parking garage shots look so different. While the 5071 and T64 are more similar, it almost feels like you're getting a green, red, and blue look, each of them side by side. Now let's take a look at some photos of Kodak Ektachrome 5071 during the day. Now this is the only shot I captured during the normal daylight hours. All other shots on 5071 were done either during overcast or golden or blue hour. Overcast days leaned more into this blue teal look rather than the dull gray tones that you're used to seeing during an overcast day. Of course, like this film likes to do, the reds just stand out, and I love how the red hat looks in this shot. Now during golden hour, the photos actually looked like they were shot in Velvia during blue hour. It has a very strong lean towards purples and pinks. And I love these shots on the frozen lake during sunset. It feels like a very soft pastel look. Now this shot overly accentuates the look of the clouds and the color of them as well. And later I'll show you how. I love the mix of blues, purples, and pinks that's kind of fading across the ice in this shot. Now this shot, it almost feels like a strange mix between Fuji Velvia and Lomochrome Purple, with the sun having this pinkish purple light. Now once it was blue hour, the sky turned purple pink, even though in reality, it looks more blue orange. Now in this shot, you can see the purple sky, but the teal is starting to come in from the lights. And by this point, the sun was completely set and it was twilight. You still see those blues, pinks, and purples in the shot. By this point, the sun was completely set and there was very little light left. And now the teals really start to come out more from the artificial lighting versus the purple twilight sky. Now let's get into a few film versus digital iPhone comparisons during the day of Kodak Ektachrome 5071. Here you can see how wildly different this form is portraying the scene. The iPhone photo really shows that it was still golden hour with plenty of daylight left, while the 5071 makes it feel like it's blue hour on Velvia. While it does ultimately look like it's not natural when you compare to what the scene actually looked like, but I really find myself drawn to the very soft, subtle pastel look that the 5071 has. Here, I really love the gradation of blue, purple, and pink in the ice, versus it feels more warm and rugged in the iPhone photo. And here's you can see how the sun really looked as it was setting. How the sun turned purple-pink in the 5071 really blew me away. So now I'm just going to give a few photos. I've been playing around with creating a Kodak Ektachrome 5071 digital film recipe on my Fujifilm X-T5. Here I tried to emulate those cool teals from the lights mixed with the warm light that was on the other side of the building. I think in a couple of these shots you really get that teal look. In these shots, you can see the teal a little bit off to the right, but still trying to accentuate the red of the sign. Hey, thanks for watching today's video. If you really enjoyed the photos from that film, I actually tried to make some digital Fujifilm recipes of that Kodak Ektachrome 5071. And if you're interested in seeing the recipe and some examples, please comment down below and I'd love to show you how I made that recipe and some example shots.